So yeah, e-bike sharing. The market for e-bikes has been tremendously growing. So these are some figures in Europe here, but in, all over the world, e-bikes are just booming, and we're getting the questions, getting the demand all the time. Do you have e-bikes? So yes, we have e-bikes, but are they really relevant? Are they important to make the project successful? I would like to share a few thoughts on this with you, and then I'm happy to have a discussion with you as well. So, electric bike sharing or electric public bike sharing, what this abbreviation stands for, is picking up definitely. So here are a few samples from Madrid, from Copenhagen, from Exeter, one of our pilot schemes. So in Madrid, the project has launched as a 100% electric fleet in 2016, end of 2015, sorry. And the issue in Madrid is at the moment, the Madrid government has taken over the operations from the operator, because the operator was incurring 300,000 euros debt every month, because they were underestimating the service efforts. So I wouldn't call it a benchmark at the moment. It's the first full-scale citywide electric bike sharing system in Europe. In Copenhagen, unfortunately it's very similar. So it's a world-class feature-rich bike design. It has a tabloid in the front, so you as a user you can navigate, and it has a strong engine, a super battery, but then it has its costs also. And the current operator in Copenhagen has also filed insolvency at the moment. So the city is right now, as we speak, looking for another operator. We're not interested. So they're still looking. Yeah, so these are two negative examples right now. I don't want to lead you into a direction thinking that electric bike sharing can't work. I just confront you with the reality at the moment, which we are facing in Europe. So in Exeter, we have a project. It's a pilot project, 23 bikes only. So we are still struggling to make it feasible, but that's more due to size, and but it's subsidized by the government, who wants to see. It's basically a learning or a research project to get some data out of the system and how electric bike sharing can play a role. So the first set of data will be published by the end of 2017, and then we also know more a little bit here. So I would like to compare the electric PBS with the non-electric PBS. So the advantages of electric bike sharing obviously is that you can extend to different target groups. So for the physically impaired or the older generation, or also some long distance commuters, for these kind of target groups, the bike sharing gets more attractive, obviously. Also, cities like Auckland are pretty hilly, also in some areas at least. So
we have a couple of volcanoes.
Yeah. So San Francisco. So there are a few cities who have a pretty hilly terrain. So for those areas, of course, bike sharing with electric support can play a role as well. On the other hand, the disadvantage of electric bike sharing is the fundamental higher investment costs. So it's fair to say that you need to consider 3 to 4 times more of budget for the capital investment, and also the higher operation costs. So you have more electric or electronic parts, so you have more issues to solve. You need to have a higher education level of your staff. You might have some more rebalancing issues when it comes to drainage of batteries. So all of these things considered, it's fair to say 20 to 30% more of invest on operations costs. And then some cities also have banned electric bikes from their streets, Shanghai to note, or also Singapore, due to safety concerns. I mean, many people we are trying to bring on the bike sharing, they haven't cycled for quite some time. So if you're giving them a pretty strong engine and they're going ahead, it's not the greatest idea. So we need to be very careful in this as well. So there are different charging concepts for electric bike sharing. Here on the left, I show you a picture from a project in Birmingham, Alabama in the US. So it's charging by a dock or the central grid. Of course, you have the higher investment or the one-off investment for the infrastructure. You need to apply some civil construction, you need to connect the station to the central grid, and thus it also requires more detailed planning exercises than just putting a plate like this onto the street. Another concept is to exchange batteries by the operator, or even move it to a charging center. So this is a concept which is applied in Milano by Clear Channel. I don't need to say that this requires quite some extra operation efforts for the service when they are doing a recharging tour every night. So they're picking up those bikes which have a less than 30% battery load, bring them to a service center, charge them for a few hours, and bring them back on the street, and that every night. So a few base conclusions here that from my point of view, electric bike sharing can be a suitable add-on for classic bike sharing in order to become more socially inclusive and also to extend the service area. But it's just like the non-electric bike sharing system. It doesn't add any value there if the basic metrics of planning, which also Julian has referred to in the beginning, aren't right. And the core aspect we need to consider is a dense station network and the maximum availability of bicycles. And if you have reached that, and if your saturation rate of the usage is at the top and you want to take it further, then you can start to make the decoration. You need to build the house first and then you can paint it. That's my advice. So here are a few projects from or electric bike projects powered by Nextbike. So one is in the Stuttgart region. It's quite a unique concept. So there was a lot of funding available for these kind of projects here, and it's a regional project integrated into public transport. So this is Stuttgart here, the city center, and here you have the whole region of Stuttgart. So we have altogether 13 electric bike stations like this. The issue in Germany is that it can get pretty cold in the winter. So electric bikes won't charge in under 0 degrees. So we need to create a shelter which is also heated, where you can open the door with your card, with your public transport card, enter the shelter, dock the bike, and it's getting charged. Here also there's space for private electric bikes. So as a user to the system, you can also park your private bike. So it has a double function here. This is not a concept I would apply to many cities, but it's something where, which is also kind of a testing ground, a pilot project. So then I mentioned Exeter already. So we have here five stations in total. Here at the university, in the city center. Here that's a car park, and we have an industrial park. The usage here, to be honest, is still pretty low. So we're talking about 0.3 rentals per bike per day. So that's not really impressive. But my main argument here is also it's due to lack of station density. You have limited connectivities in the city. That's probably why.
Do you happen to know, Seb, how many people live in Exeter? It's not the biggest city.
No, it's 120,000.
So it's a small city.
Yeah, it's a small city. So this is actually operated by a local car sharing operator. So if you are a member of the car sharing club, then you are also directly a member of the electric bike sharing. So we've also integrated here. So here's just a few technical features of our electric bike. I wasn't able to bring it with me. It was a bit heavy and bulky, but this is the 2017 generation. We have basically two different e-bikes. So this is what we call the e-bike Eco. So it's the non-smart version of the e-bike. So docking into the docking station and without board computer. It's capped at 25 kilometers an hour, although the motor could accelerate more, but there's a cap for safety, and that's basically the most important feature here. And here you see the smart version. So it's basically this bicycle just with a battery here in the middle and the middle motor in here, and it's charged by what we call the e-smart dock. So the smartness is in the dock here, the locking system, and it's with the electronic charging function. So here you have the RFID return detection, which communicates with the bike.
Expensive racks, aren't they, Seth?
Yes, exactly.
Both to buy and to install, because you have to plumb in. Sorry. I used to plumb in too. You have to connect electricity to the racks.
Exactly. Right. So basically, the docks they can both lock the electric bikes, but also the non-electric bikes. So what we're trying to, or what we are conceptualizing is using electric bikes, as I mentioned, as an add-on to an existing fleet, and to use the same kind of docking infrastructure for both bike types. So the concept is that if you have a bike station, so let's say these are non-electric bikes, the blue ones, and the red ones are electric bikes. So you can dock every bicycle in every station, and each of the docks can be used to charge e-bikes. But because, I didn't mention this, but because the charging technology is not inside the dock, here's just an induction plate and a cable, but the main technology, which is pretty expensive, is in the terminal. So we are reducing the costs on this infrastructure, and this is in the terminal only. So basically here we will have the terminal which charges the bikes, but we can also say, okay, we don't need the charging technology here, so we don't need a terminal, so just have a non-charging station here.
So how many stations would have charging capability, and how many wouldn't?
Right. So what we are, I mean, this is all at the moment still theory. We are starting to implement this kind of concept now in 2017 in the first projects, but roughly these are base assumptions. So taking an average range of about 100 kilometers. The range, of course, is a factor of the terrain or of the external conditions, but let's say around about 100 kilometers range. And let's assume an average distance which is a little bit longer than a standard bicycle. So let's say between 5 and 8 kilometers, and a charging time of to charge 80%. Currently it's 288 minutes. So what we believe is that if you are equipping 10% of all the stations in your network with charging facilities, we don't need to spend extra efforts in rebalancing empty bicycles to charging stations, because more than every 10th trip will end up at some of the charging stations here, given these figures.
So that means 10% of your rental stations are expensive, or comparatively more expensive for the infrastructure, but they also have an expensive connection cost, because you have to join the electricity somehow, and this is a big unknown cost for every single site, right? How much effort it's going to take.
But then the rest, you don't have.
The other 90%, it's very hot down, and this complements, I think, your idea of you get the basic bike share system up and running, get that working well, you've got your house there, and then you worry about painting it.
Exactly, and then you are adding for the other 10%, exactly. So the advantage is, the lower capital cost in general. Also that due to this full compatibility, you can make the planning process much easier, and operationally it's also a more efficient, cost-efficient system than if you're exchanging batteries. So this kind of approach we are applying now in the system in Warsaw. Currently, since 1st of March, there are already 4,600 bikes, including 100 kids bikes. And now in July, we are adding 100 electric bikes. And we have 3 more projects in Malta, similar concept, 340 classic bikes, 35 electric bikes, Karlsruhe 390 plus 40, and Las Palmas in Spain, 375 bikes plus 20 bikes. So, and of course we don't have data yet of this approach, but when I come to visit you next year, then we can talk about it a bit more.
All right, wonderful, thank you, Seth. One question, 2 questions about electrics before we wrap. I realize it's kind of cutting edge, so yeah, that's fine. Thank you, Seth. You talked for a long time. I think you've earned your lunch.
If I get someone, appreciate it. If not, okay.
In terms of a little bit of a wrap up, I'd like to ask for, I suppose, 1 or 2 volunteers. It would be really helpful to hear from 1 or 2 of you, maybe one thing that you learned today about bike share from Sebastian, or if you've been looking at this area for a while, one thing that you were reminded of and you'll take that forward with you for the next, that you will take forward with you for the next few months. So, could I ask sort of this half of the audience here, is there one thing that you have learned about bike share today, or one thing that you have been reminded of that you'll take forward? James.
Oh, put me on the spot.
I know you're happy talking.
I mean, to be honest, the concept that Teresa's just brought up around having individual businesses going and potentially sponsoring sites.
Yeah.
Now I know that this is I'm a little bit off
Joining
topic,
some dots
but
here.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm hearing of these sites are actually saying we're going to go and buy user bikes.
Yes.
For our work bikes.
So this is an interesting phenomenon. A reasonable size workplace, 200-300 people. They have 2 or 3 of their own pool bikes. Yeah, they're 2 or 3 bikes that are shared between those 200 or 300. So why not put 3 or 4 bikes outside and share it amongst the wider community? But you make sure that those workers have a more privileged access to it. Maybe they have a longer free period, for instance, or they're already signed up or something like that. Thank you, James. This team, okay, sir.
I thought it was very interesting that to run public transport you need 50% subsidy from a form of government. Fascinating that this is just another element of public transport.
Yeah, really. I think this answers one of the questions up here. When we think about public transport, traditionally it's on very fixed routes, that the buses travel on, super fixed routes that the trains travel on, and fixed routes for ferries for those of us that have ferries for public transport. The beautiful thing about bike share is that it's not fixed. You pick it up from the one rental station and you have another 29 to go to. So it's a lovely complement to the big distance that you might have traveled from the outer suburbs on the train or the bus. Within the central city you have the flexibility. And so I would hope that would ultimately increase the uptake of public transport cards for that macro PT. Yeah. Thank you, Rex. One more from this side. So,
I thought it was important how there was the concept there could be integration between private e-bike users and e-bike bike share stations. I think that having looked at the past kind of 5-10 years, e-bikes are going to become a massive part of commuting in hilly New Zealand especially. And I think that the idea that you can subscribe and become part of this bike share and use those stations, even if it's your own bike, is an important concept.
Oh, so that special container that you had in which city was it? Sorry, sir.
In the Stuttgart region.
In the Stuttgart region, yeah. So you can go and charge your own private bicycle in there. All of these electric bicycles, they run on lithium-ion technology, and what a lot of the retailers are telling people, and this isn't deliberate, it's just people don't know how to look after lithium-ion batteries, is they will last longer with a short discharge, quick recharge cycle. So yeah, if you've ridden 10-15 kilometers from outside into town, you may well have another 60 kilometers left in your battery, but best practice is you should plug it in and charge it up. So yeah, wonderful. Thank you, Harry. All right. Let's cut the cake. If you could all sing happy birthday. Thank you very much for your support from Nextbike Germany over the last 10 years, and we look forward to another 10 years. So, thank you.